For the last couple of years, I've been wearing a Fitbit. It tracks various things to do with my health, for example, how long I sleep each night. But the two things I'm really interested in are the number of steps I do each day and the number of minutes I've been active. Well, the number of steps, that's self-explanatory. The number of steps I do each day, be it indoors or outside, be it pottering around at home or a brisk walk around the parish. But active minutes only register when I've done 10 minutes or more of what Fitbit describes as moderate to intense activity. So it is possible to clock up 5,000 steps around the home, but as for active minutes, I have to be walking purposely for at least 10 minutes. So there's a difference between passive steps and active steps. And to earn active minutes, I have to turn those passive steps into active ones. This contrast between passive and active came to mind as I read Sunday's Gospel, particularly in the light of all we've experienced this year due to the pandemic. For this year, many of us have found ourselves in a bit of a wilderness. Normal has been turned upside down, inside out, and we've had to disconnect not just from our usual routines, but from people most precious to us. A time of enforced waiting, passive waiting. But there's a different kind of waiting too, that we might call active waiting, waiting with a purpose for something that we know is coming. Waiting in Advent is about preparing ourselves to celebrate once again the joy of the first coming of Christ, Emmanuel, God with us in human flesh. The pandemic reminds us that sometimes life requires us to watch, to wait, and to prepare. That was the experience of the people of Israel 2,000 years ago. Their history was long, with many ups and downs, yet despite this, God had remained faithful to his people. But there was a time when God seemed to fall silent. Israel found itself once more at the mercy of the Roman Empire. Oh, they knew all about waiting. Their waiting had become passive. And then something happens. And it's here that Mark opens his gospel. He writes, "The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." This is going to be a story about Jesus. But it starts with someone else. A man dressed with a leather belt around his waist, preparing a way in the wilderness for others to enter into God's presence. God's voice is to be heard once again. The waiting is not yet over, but now it's a different kind of waiting, an active waiting. John the Baptizer proclaims a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. John calls his hearers to recognise things have gone wrong, to get active and to move their hearts, and to respond in preparation for the one who is to come. John came to prepare the way, to call people to an active time of waiting, preparing hearts and minds so that when the time came, people would be able to recognise God's very presence with God's people. For when that moment of truth arrives, they'll see it for what it is. So this Advent, in this time of often weary waiting, may we hear afresh that call from John. Let's embrace Advent as a time of active waiting and preparation, so that our hearts are ready once again to receive the one to whom he pointed, the one the thong of whose sandal John declared himself unworthy to stoop down and untie. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, Emmanuel, God with us.